Hello everyone. My name is Caleb Turner, and today I'm going to share something with you that still keeps me awake at night. Something that happened to me last autumn. Something that changed everything I thought I knew about reality. Now, before I dive into this, I need to tell you something disturbing. Last month, I went to visit my grandfather's old cabin in the mountains of British Columbia. And what I discovered there, what I saw in those woods, it wasn't just terrifying. It was impossible. And the worst part, I brought something back with me. Something that won't let me go. Before I begin, I can see that 80% of my viewers haven't subscribed yet while watching my videos. So please, if you're enjoying this content, hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss an upload. Also, tell me in the comments where you're watching this from and what time it is for you right now. I absolutely love hearing from you all. And if you have your own paranormal or horror story, please email us or drop in the comments below. I read every single one. So, let me take you back to where this all started. It was late September when I received the call. My mother's voice was shaking on the other end. She told me that my grandfather, Harold Turner, had passed away in his sleep. He was 87 years old, lived alone in his cabin deep in the mountains, about 6 hours north of Vancouver. The funeral was small, quiet, just family. But what my mother told me afterwards, that's what set everything in motion. She said that in his will, my grandfather had left the cabin specifically to me. Not to her, not to my uncle, but to me, his youngest grandson. The strange thing was, I hadn't seen my grandfather in almost 15 years. Not since I was 12 years old. We'd had a falling out, or rather, my parents had forbidden me from visiting him after that last summer I spent at his cabin. I never understood why. Whenever I asked, my mother would get this look in her eyes, this mixture of fear and sadness, and she'd just say, "Your grandfather wasn't well, Caleb. He wasn't safe to be around." But I remembered him differently. I remembered a kind old man who taught me how to fish, who told me stories by the fireplace, who seemed to understand me in a way no one else did. So when the lawyer handed me the keys to the cabin, along with a sealed letter addressed to me in my grandfather's handwriting, I knew I had to go back. I had to see the place one more time, even if just to say goodbye properly. The drive up to the cabin took longer than I remembered. The roads had gotten worse over the years, overgrown and barely maintained. My GPS lost signal about 2 hours into the mountains, but I still remembered the way. Even after all these years, past the old logging route, through the valley where the morning fog never quite lifts, and finally up the winding dirt road that led to the property. The cabin looked exactly as I remembered it. A 2-story structure made of dark timber with a stone chimney and a wraparound porch. It sat in a clearing surrounded by dense pine forest, so thick that even in the middle of the day, the shadows seemed to press in from all sides. The windows were dark, like empty eyes staring out at me. I sat in my car for a long moment, just looking at the place. Something felt wrong. The forest was too quiet. No bird singing. No wind rustling through the trees. Just silence, thick and heavy like a blanket. Finally, I forced myself out of the car and walked up to the front door. The key turned smoothly in the lock, and the door swung open with a long, drawn-out creak. The smell hit me immediately. Dust and old wood, and something else, something I couldn't quite identify, something almost sweet, like flowers left too long in a vase. The interior was exactly as I remembered. The large stone fireplace dominated the main room, with my grandfather's old leather chair still positioned in front of it. His fishing rods were still mounted on the wall. His books still lined the shelves. It was like he'd just stepped out and would be back any moment. I set my bag down and pulled out the letter my grandfather had left me. My hands were shaking as I broke the seal. The paper inside was yellowed and covered in his familiar cramped handwriting. "Caleb," it began, "if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you've come back to the cabin. I knew you would. You were always the curious one, always asking questions, always wanting to understand. That's why I'm leaving this place to you, and that's why I need to tell you the truth about what's in these woods, about what I've been protecting you from all these years. When you were 12, that last summer you spent here, you saw something. Do you remember? You came running back to the cabin one evening, pale and shaking, talking about a woman in the woods, a woman in a white dress who called your name. I told you it was your imagination, that you'd fallen asleep by the lake and had a bad dream, but you didn't dream it. Caleb, you saw her, and that's why your parents never let you come back. The thing you need to understand is that these woods aren't natural. There's something old here, something that was here long before the cabin, long before any of us. The locals know about it. That's why no one else lives up here, why this whole area of the mountain is avoided. They call it different things. The hollow, the watching woods, the place where she walks. I've seen her too, many times over the years. The woman in white. She appears at dusk, always at the edge of the clearing, always watching the cabin. Sometimes I hear her singing, old songs in a language I don't recognize. Other times I hear her crying, a sound so full of grief it makes your chest ache. I spent years trying to understand what she is. I have journals, all of them in a locked drawer of my desk upstairs. Read them. Caleb, learn what I learned. But whatever you do, do not go into the woods after dark. Do not answer if you hear your name called. And if you see her, the woman in white, do not, under any circumstances, let her touch you. There's more I need to tell you, but I'm running out of time to write this. The journals will explain everything. Just promise me. Caleb, promise me you'll be careful. These woods take things. They've taken so much from me already. Don't let them take you too. Your grandfather, Harold. I read the letter 3 times, my heart pounding harder with each pass. Part of me wanted to laugh, to dismiss it as the ramblings of an old man losing his grip on reality. But I did remember that summer. I remember the woman in the woods. I'd buried that memory so deep I'd almost convinced myself it never happened. But it had. I'd been exploring the forest, following a deer trail down to the lake, when I saw her, standing between the trees, wearing a long white dress that seemed to glow in the fading light. Her hair was dark and hung loose around her shoulders. Her face. I couldn't quite make out her face. It was like trying to focus on something in a dream. The details kept slipping away, and she had called my name. Caleb, in a voice like wind through autumn leaves. Caleb, come here. I've been waiting for you. I'd run, faster than I'd ever run in my life, back to the cabin, where my grandfather was waiting on the porch. He looked at me, really looked at me, and then he'd pull me inside and lock the door. He'd made me hot chocolate and told me stories until I calmed down. But I remembered now. He kept checking the windows, kept looking out at the tree line, like he was watching for something. My parents had picked me up the next morning, earlier than planned. They wouldn't tell me why, and I never went back. Until now. I folded the letter and tucked it into my pocket, then headed upstairs to my grandfather's study. The stairs creaked under my feet, each step echoing in the silent house. The study was at the end of the hallway, its door slightly ajar. Inside, everything was neat and organized. My grandfather's desk sat beneath a window that looked out over the clearing. On top of the desk was an old oil lamp, a fountain pen, and a photograph in a simple frame. I picked up the photograph. It showed a young woman, maybe in her 20s, with dark hair and a bright smile. She was standing in front of the cabin, but the cabin looked newer, the wood lighter, the surroundings less overgrown. On the back, in faded ink, someone had written, Margaret, summer 1963 inch. I didn't recognize her. I set the photo down and tried the desk drawer. Locked. I used a small key from the keyring the lawyer had given me, and it opened with a soft click. Inside were 5 leather-bound journals, each one labeled with the year. The earliest was from 1963, the most recent from just 6 months ago. I pulled out the first journal and began to read. June 15th, 1963. Today I brought Margaret to the cabin for the first time. She loves it here, says it's the most peaceful place she's ever been. We're going to be married in the fall. I've never been happier. June 28th, 1963. Something strange happened today. Margaret went for a walk in the woods while I was fishing. When she came back, she seemed different, distant. She said she'd met a woman on one of the trails, an old woman who told her stories about the mountain, about spirits that live in the trees. Margaret seemed fascinated, kept talking about going back to find the woman again. I don't know why, but something about this makes me uneasy. July 3rd, 1963. Margaret is obsessed with the woods now. She goes out every day, sometimes for hours. She says she's looking for the old woman, that the woman has more to teach her. I tried to go with her yesterday, but she got angry, told me she needed to go alone. When she came back last night, her dress was covered in dirt and pine needles, and she had scratches on her arms. But when I asked what happened, she just smiled and said, "The forest is alive. Harold, can't you feel it?" July 12th, 1963. I'm genuinely worried now. Margaret barely sleeps. She stands at the window at night, staring out at the trees, and she started talking to herself, or to someone. I can hear her whispering when she thinks I'm asleep. Yesterday, I followed her into the woods, keeping my distance. She walked for almost an hour, deeper and deeper, until we reached a place where the trees grow so close together the sunlight barely penetrates. And there, in a small clearing, she stopped and started singing. A strange melody I'd never heard before, in words I didn't understand. And I swear, Margaret, I swear the trees moved, swayed, even though there was no wind. July 20th, 1963. Margaret is gone. I woke up this morning, and she wasn't in bed. Her nightgown was on the floor, and the front door was wide open. I've been searching all day. I've called the police. They're sending people up tomorrow. But I know, somehow I know, the woods have taken her. I can feel it. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, is that sometimes, when the sun starts to set, I can hear her singing, out there in the trees, that same strange melody. But when I call out to her, when I try to find the source, the singing stops, and there's only silence. I stopped reading, my hand shaking. I looked at the photograph again. Margaret, my grandmother. I'd never known her. My mother had told me she died before I was born, but she'd never said how, never given details. I flipped through the journal, page after page of my grandfather's increasingly desperate entries. The police had searched. They'd found nothing, no body, no trace. It was as if Margaret had simply vanished into thin air. After 3 months, the search was called off. She was declared dead, presumed to have gotten lost in the wilderness and succumbed to exposure. But my grandfather knew better. He'd stayed at the cabin, refused to leave. He'd spent years searching those woods, documenting everything he found, everything he experienced. I pulled out the second journal, then the third. The entries spanned decades, each one more disturbing than the last. My grandfather described encounters with what he called the presence in the woods. Times when he'd see a figure in white moving between the trees. Nights when he'd hear singing or crying, or his name being called in Margaret's voice. He wrote about finding strange symbols carved into tree bark, about areas where nothing grew, where the ground was always cold even in summer, about the feeling of being watched, constantly watched. He'd researched the history of the mountain, found references in old local records to disappearances going back over 100 years. Always the same pattern. Someone would move into the area, become obsessed with the woods, and then vanish. The indigenous peoples who'd originally lived here had abandoned the mountain centuries ago. They'd left behind only warnings, stories about a spirit that fed on grief and loneliness, a spirit that took the form of whatever you most desired to see. My grandfather had become convinced that Margaret was still out there, not alive, but not exactly dead either, trapped somehow. Part of the forest, part of whatever presence haunted these woods. And then, in his final journal, the one from this year, I found this entry. March 3rd. I saw her again last night. Margaret. She was standing at the edge of the clearing, just like always, wearing the same white dress she disappeared in. She looked exactly as she did that summer, hasn't aged a day. She called to me, begged me come to her, said she'd been waiting so long, that she was cold and alone. Part of me wanted to go. After all these years, part of me still wants to believe I could bring her back. But I know better now. I know what she really is, what the forest has made her into. She's a lure, nothing more. The forest uses her image, her voice, to draw people in, to take them, just like it took her. And I've realized something terrible, something I should have understood years ago. The presence in these woods, it doesn't just want anyone. It wants family bloodline. It took Margaret, and now it wants more. That's why I sent Caleb away all those years ago. It was showing itself to him, calling to him, trying to lure him in just like it did Margaret. And he's the right age now. The age Margaret was when it took her. I won't let it have him. I won't. But I'm old, and I'm tired, and I don't know how much longer I can keep watch. If you're reading this, Caleb, then I've failed. I've died and left you alone with this curse. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But you need to understand, whatever you see in those woods, whoever calls your name, it's not real. It's not human. And if you go to it, you'll never come back. I closed the journal, my hands trembling so badly I could barely hold it. The sun was setting. Long shadows stretched across the study, casting everything in shades of amber and darkness. I looked out the window, at the tree line, and my blood went cold. There was someone standing there, between the trees, wearing white. Even from this distance, even in the fading light, I could see her clearly. Dark hair, pale skin, that dress that seemed to glow with its own light. And she was looking directly at me. I stumbled backwards, knocking over the desk chair. My heart was hammering in my chest. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. I looked again, and she was still there. But now she was closer, just at the very edge of the clearing. How had she moved so fast? I hadn't even blinked. She raised one pale hand, beckoning. I could see her lips moving. And even though I was inside, behind glass and wood and stone, I could hear her voice, clear as if she was standing right next to me. "Caleb," she whispered. "Caleb, I've been waiting for you. Your grandfather promised you'd come back. Come to me. Caleb, I have so much to show you." I ran, down the stairs, into the main room. I slammed the front door shut, locked it, checked all the windows. My rational mind was screaming that this was impossible, that I was imagining things, that grief and suggestion and my grandfather's paranoid writings had gotten into my head. But I knew, deep down I knew, what I was seeing was real. Night fell quickly in the mountains. Within an hour, full darkness pressed against the windows. I'd lit the oil lamps, built a fire in the fireplace. I sat in my grandfather's chair with all his journals, reading by lamplight, trying to find something, anything, that might tell me how to survive this. That's when I heard it, singing, soft and distant, but getting closer. A melody that was beautiful and terrible at the same time. It made something in my chest ache. Made me want to cry even though I didn't understand why. I went to the window, looked out into the darkness, and there she was, standing in the middle of the clearing now, clearly visible in the moonlight. She was dancing, swaying to her own song, her white dress flowing around her like water. Her face was tilted up toward the sky, and even though I couldn't make out her features, I knew she was smiling. "Caleb," she sang, weaving my name into her melody. "Come dance with me. Caleb, come be with me. I'm so lonely, so cold. I've been waiting so long." My hand was on the doorknob before I realized I'd moved. My fingers were turning the lock. I wanted to go to her, wanted it more than I'd ever wanted anything. The singing was so beautiful, and she seemed so sad, so alone. No, this is what my grandfather warned me about. This is how it gets you. I yanked my hand away from the door, backed up until I hit the wall. The singing continued, grew louder, more insistent. It wasn't just coming from outside anymore. It was everywhere, in the walls, in the floorboards, vibrating through the very structure of the cabin. I grabbed my phone, tried to call for help. No signal. Of course no signal. I was too deep in the mountains, too far from civilization. I was alone. The singing stopped. The sudden silence was worse somehow. I held my breath, listening, waiting. And then tap, tap, tap. Something was on the porch. Footsteps slow and deliberate. Walking around the cabin, circling it, testing each window, each door. "Caleb," her voice came through the walls, no longer singing. Just speaking, conversational, almost friendly. "Why won't you come out? Your grandfather used to talk to me. He'd sit on the porch, and we'd have such lovely conversations. He told me all about you, about how special you are, about how much you loved it here. He promised, Caleb, he promised that one day you'd come back, that you'd take his place, that you'd keep me company. I get so lonely out here, so lonely in the dark. Don't you understand? I need you. The forest needs you. We're family. Caleb, we're blood. I pressed my hands over my ears, but I could still hear her. The voice wasn't coming from outside. It was in my head now. Inside me. You remember me, don't you? From when you were small. I called to you then. You almost came to me. You were so close. Just a few more steps, and you would have been mine. But he stopped you. Your grandfather. He kept you from me, kept you safe. But he's gone now, and there's no one to protect you. No one to keep us apart. Something slammed against the door. Hard, though it shuddered but held. Then again and again. But the thing was, I could still hear her voice, calm and steady. Still talking, which meant, whatever was trying to break down the door, it wasn't her. Or she was in multiple places at once. Or there were multiple things out there. I ran back upstairs, to my grandfather's study. There had to be something. Some way he'd kept himself safe all these years. I tore through the desk, scattering papers. And then I found it. A small leather pouch. Inside was a mixture of what looked like salt and dried herbs, and a note in my grandfather's handwriting. Iron and salt and mountain ASH. Burn this mixture in every room. It won't stop her, but it will slow her down. Keep the fires burning. Do not let them go out. Do not fall asleep. If you sleep, she'll get inside your head, and then you're lost. I grabbed the pouch and ran back downstairs. The pounding on the door had stopped, but now something was scratching at the windows, slow, deliberate scratches, like fingernails on glass. I threw some of the mixture into the fireplace. The flames turned blue for a moment, and the temperature in the cabin seemed to drop, but the scratching stopped. I moved through the cabin, sprinkling the mixture on the windowsills, burning small piles of it in bowls I found in the kitchen, and slowly, gradually, the sound from outside faded. The presence was still there. I could feel it, watching, waiting, but it had backed off for now. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I started to drift off, I'd hear her voice calling me, whispering promises. Sometimes it was the woman in white. Sometimes it sounded like my mother, or my grandfather, or people I'd lost over the years. The presence was rifling through my memories, my emotions, trying to find the right bait, the right lure. Dawn came slowly. The sunlight filtering through the trees seemed thinner than it should be, weaker. But with the light came silence. The presence retreated. I could feel it pulling back into the deep woods. But I knew it wasn't gone. It was never gone. It was just waiting for darkness to fall again. I should have left then. Should have gotten in my car and driven away and never looked back. But I couldn't. I don't know if it was stubbornness or curiosity or something else. Something planted in my mind by the presence. But I had to understand. I had to know what had really happened to Margaret. What my grandfather had spent 50 years fighting. So when the sun was fully up, when I was sure it was as safe as it was going to get, I walked out into the clearing. The morning was cold, my breath misting in the air. The forest was still too quiet. But in the daylight it looked almost normal, almost safe. I could see the paths leading into the trees, worn dirt trails my grandfather must have walked hundreds of times. I chose one at random and followed it. The journal entries had mentioned a place, a clearing deep in the woods where my grandfather believed the presence was strongest, where Margaret had disappeared. The forest closed in around me quickly. The path twisted and turned, leading me deeper. The trees here were old, massive pines that blocked out most of the sunlight. Their branches hung low, heavy with needles, creating a canopy that turned midday into twilight. I don't know how long I walked. Time felt strange under those trees, elastic, unreliable. But eventually the path opened up into a clearing, and I stopped dead, my breath catching in my throat. The clearing was wrong. That was the only way to describe it. The ground was bare, no grass, no moss. Just dark earth that looked wood even though it hadn't rained. The trees surrounding the space grew at odd angles, twisted bent, as if they were trying to lean away from the center. And in the middle of the clearing was a circle of stones. Old stones, covered in lichen and carved with symbols I didn't recognize. They reminded me of the symbols my grandfather had drawn in his journals, the ones he'd found carved into trees throughout the forest. I approached slowly, carefully. As I got closer, I could see that the ground inside the stone circle was different. It looked burned, scorched black, but not by fire. There was no ash, no charred wood, just this absolute darkness, like a hole had been burned into the world itself. And then I saw them, scattered around the stones. Personal items, a bracelet, a pocket watch, a child's toy, a pair of glasses, dozens of objects, all old, all weathered by time and exposure. Offerings, I realized, or maybe trophies. Evidence of everyone the presence had taken over the years. I was about to turn back, to get the hell out of there, when I saw it, lying just inside the stone circle. A ring, gold and simple, with small diamond. I recognized it from a photograph in my grandfather's study. It was Margaret's engagement ring. My grandfather must have found this place, must have seen the ring, and known, truly known, that she was gone, that there was no saving her, no bringing her back. How many times had he come here, standing where I was standing, staring at that ring, unable to reach it, unable to let go? I didn't realize I was crying until I felt the tears on my cheeks. The grief hit me all at once. For my grandfather, for Margaret, for all the people who'd been lost to these woods, for the decades of loneliness and pain and watching and waiting. And that's when I heard her. Caleb. Her voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Thank you for coming to me. Thank you for finally stepping into the circle. I looked down and my heart stopped. I'd been so focused on the ring, so lost in emotion, that I hadn't noticed. I was standing inside the stone circle, both feet on that scorched black ground. I tried to move, to step back, but my legs wouldn't respond. It was like I'd been rooted to the spot, like invisible hands were holding me in place. Don't fight it. The voice whispered, and I saw her, the woman in white. She was standing on the other side of the circle. But now, in the daylight, I could finally see her face clearly. And I understood. I understood why my grandfather could never let go. Why he'd spent 50 years watching these woods. The woman in white had Margaret's face. But it was wrong. Like a photograph that had been left in the sun too long. The features were right, but faded indistinct. And her eyes were completely black, no whites, no iris, just darkness, deep and bottomless as a well. You see, she said, and her mouth moved wrong, out of sync with her words. Your grandfather understood. He couldn't save her. She's part of the forest now, part of me, part of everything here. And soon, Caleb, so will you. She started walking toward me, gliding more than walking, her feet not quite touching the ground. I was screaming inside my head, but no sound came out. I couldn't move, couldn't run, couldn't do anything but watch as she got closer and closer. It doesn't hurt. She whispered, almost tender. It's like falling asleep, like coming home. The forest will take everything, all your pain, all your fear, all your loneliness. You'll never be alone again. Caleb, you'll be with us, with me, with Margaret, with everyone who's ever been lost here. We're family. We're. Bang. The gunshot echoed through the clearing. The woman in white shrieked, a sound that wasn't remotely human, and vanished, simply ceased to exist, like smoke in a strong wind. I fell to my knees, suddenly released from whatever had been holding me, and looked up to see a figure standing at the edge of the clearing. An old woman. She had to be in her 70s at least, holding a shotgun that looked almost as old as she was. Boy, she called out, her voice rough but steady. You got about 3 seconds to get out of that circle before she reforms. So move. I didn't need to be told twice. I scrambled out of the stone circle, half crawling, half running, until I crossed the boundary. The moment my foot touched normal ground, I felt it, like passing through a membrane, like breaking the surface of water after being held under too long. The old woman grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. Run, she said. Don't look back, don't stop, just run. We ran. The forest around us had changed. The trees seemed to writhe, their branches reaching. The shadows moved wrong, flowed like liquid. And behind us, I could hear her, the thing wearing Margaret's face, screaming in rage and frustration, a sound that made my bones ache. We burst out of the forest and into the clearing where the cabin sat. The old woman pulled me up onto the porch, and once we were across the threshold, everything went quiet. The oppressive feeling lifted, like a weight removed from my chest. I bent over, hands on my knees, gasping for breath. What the hell was that? Who are you? The old woman set her shotgun against the wall and looked at me with eyes that had seen too much. Name's Claire Bennett. She said, I live about 5 miles south of here. Been keeping an eye on this place since your grandfather died. Figured it was only a matter of time before the inheritance drew someone back. You knew my grandfather. Known him for 30 years. Claire said, met him when my husband disappeared in these woods. Harold helped me search, tried to warn me off, but I was stubborn. Your grandfather probably told you. These woods take people, but he might not have told you everything. She led me inside the cabin and poured us both coffee from a thermos she'd been carrying. My hands were shaking too badly to hold the cup steady. The thing in the woods. Claire continued, it's old. Been here longer than anyone knows. The native peoples who used to live here. They had a name for it. Roughly translates to the hungry one. It feeds on emotion, on connection, on love and loss and grief. That's why it takes people, consumes them, and then uses their image to lure others. Family, friends, loved ones. It creates a cycle, an endless harvest. Margaret. I whispered. Your grandmother, yeah. She was its first victim that we know of in the modern era. But there were others before her, going back generations. The thing is patient. It can wait years, decades, for the right moment, for the right bait. But the shotgun. You drove it off with a shotgun. Claire gave me a grim smile. Rock salt and iron filings. Old folklore. But in this case, folklore built on truth. The presence, the entity, whatever you want to call it, it's tied to the forest, to the natural world. Iron disrupts it, breaks its connection. But it's temporary. In a few hours, it'll be back. Stronger, angrier. And now that you've stepped into its circle, now that it's marked you, it won't stop until it has you. So what do? I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. Claire looked at me for a long moment. Your grandfather spent 50 years fighting this thing, trying to find a way to destroy it, free the people it's taken. He never succeeded. The best he could do was contain it, keep others away. Watch and wait and hope. Is that the life you want? Caleb, to be the next guardian, the next prisoner of these woods. What's the alternative? You leave. Tonight. Right now. You get in your car and you drive away and you never come back. Sell the property. Burn it down. I don't care. But you don't stay here. And what happens to everyone it's taken? What about Margaret? What about your husband? We just leave them. They're already gone. Claire said, her voice breaking slightly. What's wearing their faces out there? It's not them. Not anymore. The presence consumed them, body and soul. All that's left are echoes, images it uses to hurt us, to manipulate us. You can't save them. Caleb, no one can. She was right. I knew she was right. But the image of that ring, lying in the stone circle, Margaret's ring, I couldn't stop thinking about my grandfather. Spending half a century staring at these woods, unable to save the woman he loved, unable to let go, unable to leave. Was I going to do the same thing? Throw away my life, my future, for what? For ghosts and memories, and a fight I couldn't possibly win. I need to think. I said finally. Claire nodded. I figured you might. I'll stay tonight, keep watch. But tomorrow, Caleb, tomorrow you need to make a choice. Because that thing out there, it's already inside your head, already planting thoughts, making the cabin feel like home, making you want to stay. That's how it works. That's how it got your grandfather, and how it'll get you if you're not careful. That night was worse than the first. Claire and I took turns keeping watch, burning my grandfather's mixture of salt and herbs, maintaining the wards. But the presence was relentless. It threw itself against the cabin, scratching, pounding, screaming. Sometimes it was the woman in white. Sometimes it was other figures, dozens of them. All the people it had taken over the years, all crying out, begging, threatening. And sometimes it was my grandfather. I saw him standing in the clearing, clear as day, wearing the clothes he died in. He called my name, told me he needed help, that he was trapped, that I had to come get him. It took everything I had not to open that door, not to run out to him. Claire watched me struggle. It knows, she said quietly. It knows exactly which buttons to push. It's had all night to sort through your memories, your fears, your desires. It'll use everything against you. Dawn came eventually. The longest night of my life finally ended, and in the morning light, I made my decision. I packed my grandfather's journals, took the photograph of Margaret, and I left. Claire followed me in her truck, making sure I actually got on the road, that I didn't turn back. The cabin grew smaller in my rearview mirror, and with every mile, I felt the grip on my mind loosening, like waking from a dream or a nightmare. But it wasn't over. I know it's not over, because I can still feel it sometimes. Late at night, when I'm alone, I hear singing, faint and distant, like it's coming from very far away. And sometimes, when I'm not quite awake, I see her, the woman in white, standing in the corner of my room, watching me, waiting. Claire says it'll fade with time, that the further I get from the cabin, from the woods, the weaker the connection will become. She says that I made the right choice, that getting away was the only way to survive. But some nights I'm not so sure, because the dreams have started. Every time I close my eyes, I'm back there, walking through those woods, following that dirt path deeper and deeper into the darkness. And she's always there, waiting at the stone circle, smiling with Margaret's face, telling me to come home. I've tried everything, sleeping pills, therapy, even staying awake for days at a time, but nothing works. The presence has marked me, claimed me, and it's not letting go. 3 weeks after I left the cabin, I received a package in the mail. No return address, just my name written in handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a single item, Margaret's ring, the same ring I'd seen in the stone circle, impossible as that should be. It sat on my desk for days. I was too afraid to touch it, too afraid to throw it away. It felt like a message, a reminder. You can run, but you can't hide. We're still connected. You still belong to us. I called Claire, told her about the ring. She went silent for a long moment, then said, "It's testing you, seeing how strong your resolve is. Whatever you do, don't put on. Don't keep it. Get rid of it. Now, I wanted to. I really did. But every time I tried, I'd feel this overwhelming sadness, this grief, so profound it made my chest hurt. Like throwing away the ring would be betraying Margaret, betraying my grandfather, abandoning them forever, which is insane. I know it's insane. They're dead. They're gone. The ring is just metal and stone. But that's how it gets inside your head. Makes you doubt. Makes you second-guess everything. Finally, I took the ring to a church. Not because I'm particularly religious, but Claire suggested it. Said blessed ground might help. The priest, Father Thomas. He was old, must have been in his 80s. He took one look at the ring, and his face went pale. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. I told him everything. The cabin, the woods, the presence, my grandfather's 50-year vigil. Father Thomas listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he sat back in his chair and closed his eyes. "I've heard stories about that mountain," he said finally. "When I was young, training for the priesthood, there was a mission there, a small church. They tried to minister to the indigenous peoples, to the loggers and trappers who worked the area, but the priests kept disappearing, one by one, over the course of about 10 years. Eventually the church abandoned the mission, declared the area cursed. That was back in the 1880s. The entity, the presence, it's been there that long. Longer, Father Thomas said, much longer. The indigenous peoples had stories going back centuries. A spirit that lived in the deep forest, that fed on human sorrow. They performed rituals to appease it, to keep it contained. But when the white settlers came, when they drove the native peoples away, those rituals stopped, and the entity was free to hunt again. He picked up the ring, holding it carefully like it might burn him. This object is tainted, corrupted by prolonged exposure to the presence. It's become a conduit, a link between you and that place. As long as you have it, you'll never be free. So what do? We destroy it. Father Thomas said, not physically, that won't work. The connection is spiritual, metaphysical. We need to perform a cleansing, sever the bond. He spent the next hour preparing, drawing symbols on the floor and salt, lighting candles, reading passages from old books I didn't recognize. Some of the words weren't even in English. Latin maybe, or something older. And then he placed the ring in the center of the salt circle and began to pray. The temperature in the room dropped. My breath misted in the air. The candles flickered even though there was no wind. And I heard her, that voice, the woman in white. She was screaming, not in pain but in rage, in fury at being denied. "Caleb," she shrieked. "Caleb, you can't do this. You belong to US. You promised. Your grandfather promised." The ring began to glow, a sickly greenish light that hurt to look at. Father Thomas kept praying, his voice growing stronger, more insistent. And then, with a sound like breaking glass, the light shattered. The ring went dark, cold, inert. Just a piece of jewelry again, nothing more. I felt it, the moment the connection broke. Like a string that had been pulled taut, suddenly snapping. The pressure in my head, the constant awareness of being watched, it vanished. For the first time in weeks, I felt truly alone, truly free. Father Thomas slumped to his chair, exhausted. "It's done," he whispered. "The bond is severed. You're released." I thanked him, left a donation that probably wasn't enough, and walked out into the sunlight. I felt lighter, cleaner, like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't realize was there until it was gone. That was 2 months ago. And I want to tell you that everything went back to normal, that I put it all behind me and moved on with my life. But that would be a lie, because Claire called me last week. Her voice was shaking. "Caleb, you need to know something. The cabin had burned down 3 nights ago. Electrical fire, they think, burned straight to the ground. Nothing left but the stone foundation." "Okay," I said slowly, not understanding why she sounded so upset. "That's probably for the best. Right. Now no one else can go there, can get drawn in." "That's not the point," Claire said. "Caleb, I was watching, like I always do. I saw the smoke, saw the flames, and I swear, I heard screaming, dozens of voices, screaming like they were being burned alive. And when the fire finally died down, when I went to look at the ruins, the forest around the clearing, it was dead. Every tree within 100 yards, just dead, like something had sucked all the life out of them." A chill ran down my spine. "What does that mean?" "I don't know," Claire admitted. "But Caleb, destroying the cabin, severing your connection with that ring, I think we might have done something we don't understand. The presence was tied to that place, bound there somehow. But now," she didn't finish the sentence, didn't need to. I understood what she was implying. By breaking our connections to the cabin, by destroying the anchor that kept the presence contained, we might have set it free. I've been having the dreams again, but they're different now. I'm not at the cabin anymore. I'm in the city, walking down familiar streets, going about my normal day. And she's there, the woman in white. I see her in crowds, standing on street corners, watching me from coffee shop windows. She's not trying to lure me anymore. She's not calling my name or singing her strange songs. She's just watching, waiting, following me. And I know, somehow I know, that this isn't over. That destroying the cabin didn't end anything. It might have just made things worse, because now the presence isn't tied to one place, one patch of cursed woods in the mountains. Now it's mobile, free hunting. 2 days ago I saw her outside my apartment, standing on the sidewalk across the street, staring up at my window. When I looked away for just a second, when I glanced down at my phone, and then looked back, she was gone. But I know she was there. I know it. I've been doing research, trying to find any information about entities like this, about forest spirits or nature demons, or whatever the hell that thing is. Most of what I find is folklore, superstition. But there are patterns, stories from different cultures, different time periods, all describing something similar. A presence in wild places that feeds on human emotion, that traps souls, that spreads if disturbed. The indigenous peoples who abandoned that mountain, they didn't just leave because they were afraid. They left because they knew. They understood that the only way to contain the entity was to leave it alone, to let it have its territory, to maintain the old boundaries. And we broke those boundaries. First when the settlers came, when my grandfather built his cabin, when Margaret wandered into those woods, And finally, when I severed the connection, when the cabin burned, we invited it in. And now it's here, in the world, in civilization, no longer bound by the old rules, the old limitations. I called Claire last night, told her what I've been seeing, what I've learned. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "We need to fix this. Caleb, somehow we need to put it back, re-establish the boundaries, contain it again before." Before what? Before it spreads. Before it finds new hunting grounds, new victims. Your grandfather spent 50 years keeping it contained to those woods, keeping people safe even if it cost him everything. And we undid all of that in a matter of weeks. She's right. I know she's right. But how do you contain something like this? How do you fight a force that's older than human civilization, that exists halfway between the physical and spiritual worlds, that can appear as anyone be anywhere? I've been going through my grandfather's journals again, reading them more carefully this time, looking for something I might have missed, and I found an entry, dated just a month before he died. "I'm tired," he wrote. "So tired of watching, of waiting, of being the barrier between that thing and the rest of the world. I've given it 50 years, half a century of my life, and I still don't know if I've made any difference. If Margaret is still in there somewhere, trapped suffering, or if she's truly gone, and I've been torturing myself for nothing. But I can't stop, can't leave, because the moment I do, the moment there's no one standing guard, it will spread, it will hunt, it will take and take and take until there's nothing left." I had hoped, foolishly perhaps, that Caleb would understand, that he'd take my place, continue the vigil, but I can't ask that of him, can't condemn him to the same half-life I've lived. So I've been working on something else, something desperate, dangerous, but possibly the only solution. There's a ritual mentioned in the old records, a binding. The indigenous peoples used it to trap the entity originally, to confine it to that patch of forest. It requires a sacrifice, a willing soul to act as anchor, to bind themselves to the presence, become its keeper, its warden, for as long as they live. I'm old. My time is running short anyway. If I can perform the ritual, bind myself to it permanently, then when I die, maybe it dies too, or at least becomes dormant, weakened, contained in a way that doesn't require constant vigilance. Tomorrow I go into the woods. Tomorrow I make the binding. And if you're reading this, Caleb, if I failed, if the ritual didn't work or I couldn't complete it, then I'm sorry. I'm so very sorry. But there might still be a way. The ritual can be performed by blood family, passed down the line. Turner blood carries something, some quality that the presence recognizes, responds to. That's why it wanted Margaret, why it wants you. But that connection can be used, turned against it. The details are in the loose pages at the back of this journal, the words that need to be spoken, the offerings that need to be made, the price that must be paid. I pray you never have to use them. But if the presence is free, if it's hunting, then someone must stand against it. Someone must make the binding, before it's too late. I found the loose pages, yellowed and fragile, covered in my grandfather's handwriting and diagrams copied from much older sources. The ritual is complex, requires specific materials, specific timing, and yes, a sacrifice, not of life exactly, but of freedom of autonomy. The person who performs the binding becomes permanently connected to the presence, can feel what it feels, know where it is, what it's hunting. They become its opposite, its counterbalance, forever locked in a struggle to contain it, to limit its reach, to protect others from its hunger. It's what my grandfather tried to do, what he might have succeeded at, if he hadn't run out of time, if his heart hadn't given out before he could complete the ritual. And now, the choice falls to me. I could run, leave the country, change my name, try to get as far away as possible, and hope that distance weakens the connection enough that it loses interest. But I've read enough of my grandfather's research to know that won't work. Turner blood, Turner lineage. The presence has been fixated on our family for decades. It took Margaret, tried to take me when I was 12, waited patiently for me to come back. It won't stop, won't let me go. And while it's hunting me, while it's focused on claiming what it believes it's owed, other people will die. Innocent people who wander too close, who catch its attention, who become collateral damage. Or I could perform the ritual, make the binding, become what my grandfather was meant to be, a living ward, a guardian, spending the rest of my life keeping the presence in check, feeling its hunger, its rage, its endless cold need, never free, never truly my own, but potentially saving countless others. Some choice, right? I've been staring at those pages for 3 days now. The ritual requires a full moon, which is tomorrow night. Claire has agreed to help, to witness, to make sure I don't back out at the last moment when the fear becomes overwhelming. Because it will. My grandfather's notes make that clear. The moment the binding begins, the presence will fight, will throw everything it has at stopping the ritual, will use every memory, every fear, every weakness to break your will. I've been preparing, gathering the materials, salt and iron and mountain ash, specific stones from running water, blood from a direct descendant, which means my own, and something personal, something that represents what I'm sacrificing, what I'm giving up to make this work. I chose my grandfather's photograph, the one of him and Margaret, young and happy, before the woods took her, before everything fell apart. It represents the life I won't have, the future I'm trading away, the love and happiness and normalcy that the present steals from everyone it touches. Tomorrow night, I return to the mountains, to the burned remains of the cabin, to the clearing where this all began, and I make the binding. I become the new guardian, the new keeper. I tie myself to the presence, not to destroy it. I don't think that's possible, but to contain it, to hold it in place, to be the barrier between it and the rest of the world. Claire says I'm insane, says there has to be another way. But I've read everything my grandfather wrote, cross-referenced it with every source I can find. And this is it. This is the only solution. Someone with Turner blood, someone the presence has already marked and claimed, must willingly bind themselves to it, use that connection as a chain, a prison. I won't lie. I'm terrified. The thought of spending the next 40, 50, 60 years, however long I live, connected to that thing, feeling its presence in my mind constantly, knowing that the moment I die, if I don't have a blood relative to pass the binding to, it will be free again. It's a special kind of hell. But I keep thinking about my grandfather. 50 years he watched those woods. 50 years of loneliness and grief and duty. He did it without the ritual, without the binding, just pure stubborn will. And he managed to contain the presence, to limit its reach, to save lives. If he could do that, then maybe I can too. Maybe I can finish what he started, complete the binding he never got to make, and finally give him peace. Give Margaret peace. Give all the souls that thing has taken some kind of rest. I'm recording this now, creating a record just like my grandfather did, because if I fail, if the ritual doesn't work or I'm not strong enough, someone needs to know what happened. Someone needs to understand what's at stake. If you're watching this, if you've made it this far, then you need to understand something. There are things in this world that don't follow the rules we think we know. Things older than civilization. Things that hunt and feed and take. And sometimes, the only way to fight them is sacrifice, is choosing to stand in the gap, to be the wall between darkness and light, even when it costs everything. My grandfather understood that. He lived it for half a century. And tomorrow night, I follow in his footsteps. I make the choice he never got to complete, and I become what I was always meant to be, the guardian of those cursed woods, the keeper of the presence, the last line of defense. I don't know if I'll survive the ritual. My grandfather's notes suggest the binding process is intense, traumatic, that the presence will try to break my mind, that I'll see things, experience things that no human should have to endure. But if I do survive, if I make it through, then I won't be making videos anymore. Won't be telling stories or chasing mysteries, because I'll be living one every day for the rest of my life. So this is goodbye. This is the last story I'll tell. At least, the last one as myself, as who I am right now. Free and human and separate. Tomorrow, I become something else. Something more and less than human. Something bound eternally to darkness, so others can stay in the light. Claire is calling. Says it's time to go. Time to drive up to the mountains. Time to face what's waiting. The sun is setting, and I can already feel it. The presence. It knows what I'm planning. It's angry, excited, eager. It thinks it's won. That by performing the binding, I'm giving myself to it completely. It doesn't understand, doesn't realize that this ritual, this sacrifice, will be its prison, not my doom. My grandfather figured that out, used the presence's own hunger against it, and I'll do the same. One last thing. If you have family, people you love, tell them, don't wait. Don't assume there will be time, because there might not be. My grandfather lost 50 years with his family because of duty, because of sacrifice. Don't make the same mistakes. Live your life. Love the people around you. And if you ever find yourself in the deep woods, if you ever hear someone calling your name from the darkness, if you ever see a figure in white standing at the edge of the trees, run. Don't look back. Don't listen to the promises. Don't try to be a hero. Just run. Get away. Get to safety. And never, never go back. That's all the wisdom I have. All the warnings I can give. The rest is up to me. It's been 6 months since I made the recording above. 6 months since that night in the clearing. Since the ritual. Since the binding. And I'm still here. Still alive. Though alive might not be the right word anymore. The ritual worked. After a fashion. I can feel it constantly now. The presence. It's not separate from me anymore. It's part of me. Woven into my consciousness like a second heartbeat. I know when it's hunting. Can feel its hunger. Its rage. Its endless cold need. And I can stop it. Not completely. Not forever. But I can hold it back. Redirect it. Keep it contained to the woods. The burned cabin site has become my home now. I rebuilt a small structure there. Just enough to survive. To maintain the vigil. Claire brings me supplies once a week. Food. Medicine. News from the outside world. She's aged in these 6 months. The worry. The guilt of what we did. What I became. It weighs on her. She keeps apologizing. Keeps saying she should have found another way. But we both know this was always how it would end. From the moment my grandfather left me that cabin. That letter. That choice. This was my destiny. The presence tests me constantly. Shows me visions of my old life. My friends. My family wondering where I went. Why I disappeared. It offers me freedom. Release. Says I could leave if I just let it have one soul. Just one person. One sacrifice to satisfy its hunger, and then we'd both be free. But I know that's a lie. There's no satisfying something like this. No filling a void that deep. One soul would become 10. Would become 100. Would become the harvesting ground my grandfather spent 50 years preventing. So I stay. I hold the line. I feel every moment of its frustration. Its fury. And slowly, very slowly, I'm learning things. Understanding things my grandfather never had time to discover. The presence isn't just a predator. It's not just hungry. It's lonely. Desperately, achingly lonely. That's why it takes people. Keeps their echoes. Creates its twisted family. It was something else once. Long ago. Before the indigenous peoples bound it. Before it became this twisted thing that feeds on grief. I catch glimpses sometimes. In dreams. In the moments between sleeping and waking. A spirit of the forest. A guardian. Something that was supposed to protect. Until something happened. Some betrayal. Some tragedy. That turned protection into possession. Guardianship into imprisonment. I don't know if that knowledge helps. Don't know if understanding it makes this easier. But it's something. A piece of the puzzle. Maybe someday. Maybe if I'm bound to this thing long enough. I'll understand fully. I'll see what it was. What it lost. Why it became what it is. And maybe, just maybe, I'll find a way to heal it. To end this cycle. To free all the souls it's taken. Including Margaret. Including my grandfather's decades of pain. Including myself. But that's a long game. A hope so distant it barely flickers. For now. For today. For tonight. I keep watch. I maintain the binding. I stand between the darkness and the light. Just like my grandfather did. Just as whoever comes after me will have to do. Unless I can find another way. A better way. An ending that doesn't require eternal sacrifice. The sun is setting now. I can feel the presence stirring, getting stronger as darkness falls. It's time for me to begin the nightly ritual. The prayers and wards and bindings that keep it contained, that reinforce the chains, that protect everyone who doesn't know, who can't know, how close they came to something terrible. This is my life now. This is my purpose. And I've made peace with that. Mostly. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. Through my story, my grandfather's story, Margaret's tragedy, all of it. I know this isn't the ending you probably wanted. There's no clear victory, no defeating the monster, no riding off into the sunset, just reality, messy and complicated and ongoing, just like real horror, real darkness. It doesn't end neatly. It just continues, and someone has to stand against it. If you enjoyed this story, if it resonated with you, if you have your own experiences with things that can't be explained, I want to hear them. Drop your stories in the comments below. Tell me what you've seen, what you've survived, what you're still running from. This community, these shared experiences, they matter. They remind us we're not alone, even when we feel most isolated. And please, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Turn on notifications, because while I may not be able to make videos anymore, while my story has reached its conclusion, there are others out there. Other tales of darkness and mystery and things that lurk at the edges of reality. Other storytellers who need your support, your engagement, your belief that these stories matter. Tell me in the comments, what topic do you want to see covered next? What mysteries intrigue you? What horrors keep you awake at night? Do you want more forest legends? More family curses? More stories about places that shouldn't exist, but do? More tales of ordinary people facing extraordinary darkness. What aspect of the story affected you most? Was it my grandfather's 50-year vigil, Margaret's tragic fate, the ancient presence itself, or the choice I had to make, the sacrifice that changed everything? Let me know. Your feedback, your thoughts, they fuel this community. They keep these stories alive. And most importantly, if you know someone who would appreciate this story, who loves horror, who craves mystery, who understands that the scariest stories are the ones that might just be true, share this video with them. Help spread the word. Help build this community of believers, of seekers, of people who know that reality is stranger and darker than we're taught to believe. Until next time, stay safe out there. Keep your eyes open. Trust your instincts. And if you ever find yourself alone in the deep woods, if you ever hear something calling your name from the darkness, remember my story. Remember my grandfather's warning. And run. Just run.